1 year ago, I visited Poland for the first time in my entire life. I took a trip to Wrocław for 2 days, and it changed everything for me. Visiting Poland made me realize that my hometown in the United States is heavily influenced by Polish culture, and that I am actually deeply connected to a country that I have no ethnic ties to. And it made me very determined to go back. There was so much more to see, and trust me when I say there was so much more to learn. My name is Josh, and I am a digital nomad who lives in a different country every single month. Join me as I take a road trip from Gdańsk at the northern border all the way to Zakopane in the south, and find out exactly why it is that I needed to go back to Poland for the second time. When I set off on this journey, I didn't have a clue what I was going to make this video about. I was a little nervous. I landed into the Gdańsk airport super early in the morning. I hadn't slept much at all the night before, and the weather was a little bit rainy. And so, yeah, we weren't really off to a great start. I was honestly feeling kind of sluggish. It was too early to eat lunch and way too early to check into my hotel. So I dropped my bags off in a locker at the train station and decided, totally on a whim, that the first thing that I was going to do was to visit a museum. And not just any museum, but the Museum of the Second World War in Gdańsk. In hindsight, that's kind of an intense way to start an already sluggish day, but you know, I did it anyway. This is a gorgeous museum, both inside and out. If you didn't know, Gdańsk is actually the place where the very first shots of World War II were fired. This museum commemorates that and gives a pretty detailed look at Poland's involvement in the war. The best part of learning about World War II from Poland's perspective is that it gave me a ton of history right off the bat. The various exhibits in the museum really go into the history of the Polish kingdom prior even to World War I, and I learned how it had been split into territories which were governed by Germany, Russia, and Austria-Hungary. I had no idea that Poland didn't even exist as an independent state from 1795 all the way until 1918. My mind was blown. It wasn't my intention, but I had accidentally started my Poland trip with a history lesson. And as I shook off my drowsiness, it started to dawn on me. I began to realize why that first video I made about Poland a year ago performed so well. And it has to do with the Polish people themselves. As I headed for the train station, I couldn't shake the information that I had learned in the World War II museum. The fact that Poland had been broken apart and put back together so many different times, it just kept swirling around in my head. And, truly nowhere exemplifies that concept more than the place that I was visiting next. Finally, I would have the chance to explore in the capital city, Warsaw. Warsaw is an interesting city. It actually feels like two totally different places depending on where you're standing. And that might have been off-putting if I hadn't just been to the War Museum in Gdańsk. Because through my visit to the museum, I was reminded of the fact that somewhere around 97% of the city of Warsaw had been actually just leveled to the ground by the end of the Nazi occupation. I mean, honestly, just an absolute tragedy. I wanted some more information. And so after grabbing some lunch with the pigeons in the old town square, I joined a free walking tour. If you've watched any of the other videos on my channel, you already know that I love free walking tours. They provide you with so much context, and you get to choose how much you want to pay at the end. I took a ton away from this, but I think what resonated with me the most was what the guide said about the city's rebuilding process. Most people know that the city was leveled. Way less people know that this city was rebuilt very quickly. It could have been abandoned, but it wasn't. It was fully reconstructed. And you might be thinking that the reconstruction would have come at the hands from donations from other foreign entities, right? But no, it wasn't. It was the Polish people who rebuilt the city of Warsaw from the ground up. They came together and donated whatever money they had and used whatever building materials and reference photos and paintings that they could gather in order to restore the city of Warsaw. And while some parts of the city would continue being restored for decades, the old town itself was largely rebuilt in just 5 years. 5 years with their own money. I actually got a little bit emotional when I heard that. But that sort of resilience and perseverance is honestly hard for me to even fathom. I mean, after the war, the people lost everything. Everything. I mean, it would be so easy to give up, if not on yourself, on your country or your city. But the people did not give up. They got down to work. And it made me so proud of the people of Poland and just of human beings in general. Like, we're a pretty impressive species. You have to admit it. After another lovely train ride, I made it down to my next stop, the city of Kraków, with the plan to end my journey a couple days later by taking a day trip down to the gorgeous little skiing town of Zakopane. Kraków is an absolutely stunning city. At one time, it was actually the capital of Poland, and as such, they have a little bit of a rivalry to this day with Warsaw. And I have to say this, maybe it's just because in Kraków I was lucky enough to have great weather. Maybe it's because we were inching closer to the weekend. Maybe it's just because now I was farther south. Ultimately, I'm not sure what the reason for this is. But the one thing that I immediately noticed about Kraków is how insanely alive and thriving the city is. It is so much fun. I mean, there is so much to do just in the old town alone, including some very wild adventures like a balloon museum, which I happen to be one of the very first people to ever get to enjoy, as well as like these haunted houses and carnival games. There is live music everywhere and mascots, and there is just so much joy and life. Yeah, let me say that again. Joy and life. Why is that so important? Well, it's important because, in case you didn't know, Kraków is actually very close to the location of Auschwitz, which of course was the largest concentration camp used by the Nazis. It's open for tours and for visitors, and if you happen to visit Kraków for yourself, while it is very heavy, you should absolutely consider visiting the site. It's important, but it's also very sad and very dark, which is what makes the contrasting light and joy coming out of Kraków all the more impressive. I couldn't help but just be so happy walking around Kraków. It is beautiful, it is original. The old town is surrounded by a park, so there's tons of green space. It had a ton of public art, and the way I see it, Kraków is just an absolute beam of light pouring out of southern Poland. And it was there, in Kraków, somewhere between climbing through the balloons in the Balloon Museum and listening to live music on the street, that I finally knew exactly what I was gonna talk about in this video. The nation of Poland has been split apart and brought back together so many times throughout its history. It has been conquered and separated, and it has been reunified. It has been bombed and torn apart, and it's been rebuilt. Efforts have been made by evil people to actually wipe large parts of the Polish population off the map. And yet, through it all, the nation of Poland has survived. And today, it's even thriving and growing at a fantastic rate. I am often very anti-nationalism. The more that I travel, the more I dislike borders. I think that it's mostly bad, and it gets people to hate other people that they have never met for no reason aside from furthering their government's goals. However, I do think that in just a few cases, nationalism can be good. I think that having a shared sense of history and identity brings people closer together. It makes them proud of where they're from, and it makes them want the best for themselves and for their communities. The people of Poland are so proud of Poland. It was mostly the Poles, the locals, who watched that first video and who were curious to hear my story about connecting with their nation from across the Atlantic Ocean. And the more time that I spend there, the more I start to get it. If you're Polish, hear me on this. You should be proud. It's hard for me to even get out of bed on some days when I have a tummy ache. I can't even imagine what it would have been like to rebuild an entire nation and city from nothing. I absolutely needed to go back to Poland. It taught me so much more about the resiliency of the people of Polish heritage in my community back home. And to be honest, it taught me a lot about humanity in general. If you are Polish, thank you for watching, truly, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for your kindness every time I come to visit. And if you're watching and you're not Polish, I genuinely hope that you get the chance to visit Poland for yourself one day very soon as well. I promise you, you'll be better for it. You are the best. Thank you so much for watching. It means the world to me. And if you're still here right now, would you consider liking and subscribing? And please let me know if you'd like to see more videos from Poland. For now, here's that first viral video that I made about Poland 1 year ago.